Hello and welcome to the Officers Academy. So in today's topic we will be seeing China's warrior wolf diplomacy. So what are the subtopics that we are going to discuss today? Let us have a quick glance on it. So first is we will start with the India-China border problem. Okay, so currently it is in news, the border skirmishes between India and China. So we will try to go to the genesis of it, from where exactly this problem started and why is it lingering on till date. Second, we will try to see the genesis of this term warrior wolf diplomacy. So what is this warrior wolf diplomacy? We will discuss it. Why China is resorting to the warrior wolf diplomacy. To put it in a nutshell, in the warrior wolf diplomacy, China, the current Chinese president's regime, that is the Xi Jinping's regime, they are trying to move away from the ideology of Deng Xiaoping and resorting back to the strategy of Mao. So what lies in this warrior wolf diplomacy, we will try to discuss it. Third, we will try to see that whether a war between India and China, is it possible in a likely situation? Now we know that India and China, both of them are mature countries. War is unlikely, but see, we need to know one thing about war. War can escalate either with a design or with an accident. So is there any possibility of a war between India and China? We will try to explore that possibility as well. And fourth, we will try to see what is India's response to the warrior wolf diplomacy of China. So how the Indian government is strategically trying to respond to the warrior wolf diplomacy. So this is what we are going to discuss in today's topic. So now let us try to understand the genesis of the India-China border problem. The Indian border with the Chinese was settled by the British. Now we know that before independence, India was a colony of the Britishers. So why Britishers were so much of concern for settling the borders with China? Because Britishers had the threat of Russia. Okay, that the Russian Empire might encroach from the north, okay, and take over the Indian colony from the British. Now India was one of the most wealthiest colony for the British, from where they used to drag or drain the wealth away from India to UK. So इन्हें डर क्या था that they might lose India to the Russians. That is why they were so proactive with solving the border problem with China. Now see, initially in the year 1879, Britishers drew the border or settled the border with China with a line which was termed as the Johnson line. So this green line that you see over here is called as the Johnson line. Now it was much of a forward line. The entire Aksai Chin region came under the British possession. Okay, so Chinese did not have a control over the Aksai Chin region, but we know that the British border settlement with China kept on changing as per the strategic interest of the Britishers. Now, when the Great Game, now see, in the year 1899, okay, after the Great Game, now the Britishers settled the border with China with another line, which is called as the Macartney-Macdonald line. Okay, so we see the coming up of a new line, which was called as the Macartney-Macdonald line. Okay, now it was more of a conservative line, but the point was, this line was proposed by the British in 1899, but Chinese officials or the Chinese regime did not give any official response. Okay, so as the Britishers did not get any response, they again resorted back to the Johnson line of 1879. Okay, so this was actually much more of a conservative line, but the Chinese did not give any response to it. What happened in the year of 1962 after the India-China border aggression? Okay, clear. Now in 1962, new line, the Chinese encroached inside and a new line was drawn, that is the line of separation of India and China. So this is the line that was drawn in 62. Currently this is the LAC. So this entire Aksai Chin region, which is strategically important for China, now comes under the control of the Chinese. So India basically lost this territory to China, or it went into the Chinese control. So currently LAC, line of actual control, is the line separating China and India. Now remember, LAC is not an international boundary. Okay, so it is only a temporary line of peace. Okay, it is not an international boundary because international boundaries are agreed and ratified by both the parties. This is more of a disputed line. The territory is disputed between India and China. So LAC is only a temporary line of peace between the Chinese and the Indians. But the point is Chinese have another perception. Now see, Chinese claim a line beyond the LAC. So I'll just draw it over here. This line beyond the LAC. So China wants this entire territory to be under Chinese position. Okay. So China claims this line to be the new LAC. Okay. Now this line will also include the Karakoram Pass. So you can see if we have marked it over here. Okay. So as per the Chinese perception, if we consider this line to be the new LAC or the new line, we will lose the Karakoram Pass. Okay, so now current conflict that we saw or the current intrusion of the Chinese forces that we saw was in this region. So the Chinese forces came 4 tenths ahead. In reply, Indian forces went 8 tenths ahead. Okay, now we know that currently after 21 days of standoff, this issue has been resolved. Both the forces have mutually reciprocated back. Okay, or mutually withdrawn their forces from each other's territory. So this is more or less the border issue between India and China. So 3 lines of our importance. Johnson line, initially drawn by the British. Second came the Macartney-MacDonald line, not formally replied by China, but informally China accepted this line in the year 1959. But remember, this was only an informal acceptance by the China. Chinese never formally accepted the MacDonald-Macartney line. Okay? What is the Chinese perception? They want this line which is more interior to the current LAC. And Indian perception, India wants to settle the LAC at the Johnson line, which was the original position of the Britishers. Okay? So currently where do we stand? Currently we stand at the LAC. That is the line separating the India and the Chinese forces in 1962. So all in all, this is in a nutshell, this is the border issue between India and China in the northern sector. That is in which region? In the Aksai Chin region. Okay, now why this Aksai Chin region is important for China? We have to understand that also. This region is important to China because China wants to control Tibet. Okay, now Tibet time and again it has put down its claim for independence to be declared as an independent state. But China does not want to happen, or China does not allow Tibet to be an independent state. It considers Tibet under the One China policy. It considers Tibet to be a part of China. So to have a strategic control over China, this Aksai Chin territory is important for the Chinese. So we have understood the strategic importance of Aksai Chin as well. So now let us try to understand the India-China border problem into further depth. India-China border problem is in 3 sectors. One which we have already seen, that is in the north, in the northern sector. That is near the region of Aksai Chin, which we have already seen now. Second is the middle sector. Middle sector in the region of Sikkim. Okay, that is nothing but the Siliguri corridor. Okay, we will try to understand this issue also. What is this issue of Siliguri corridor? And third is the region of Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, so currently India has border issues with China in these 3 sectors. Northern sector, Aksai Chin, middle sector near the Siliguri corridor, and third is the Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, that is basically dealing with the Tawang district of Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, so now we will go into further depth of these issues. We have already covered the issue in the northern sector. Now we will see what are the problems in the middle sector, that is the Siliguri corridor, and the Arunachal Pradesh, that is with respect to the Tawang district. So now let us try to understand the India-China border problem in the middle sector. So let us try to understand the geography of the region. Okay, so we are concerned with the Siliguri corridor. Okay, what is this region? What is its importance? Let's try to understand. Now see, focus on these blue parts, this entire region, that is the state of Sikkim, Northeast India, again Indian region, surrounded by a tri-junction of 3 countries, that is Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and in the north lies China. Okay, so if you see this valley region, okay, this section, it is at the tri-junction of Sikkim, Bhutan, and China. So this is our area of concern. Now if we just take a smaller view of this map, we will try to understand it. So we are talking about this region now. Okay, this region is also called as, the region that we have marked is also called as Chicken's Neck. Okay, now why this region is strategically important for us, let us try to understand. Now what China is trying to do in this region, China is trying to persuade Bhutan. Okay, so to award some territory of Bhutan to China. In return, China is ready to give more territory to Bhutan in some other parts. Okay, now why it is important? If Bhutan cedes some of its territory to China, this valley will widen. Okay, now what if this valley widens? Currently the valley is narrow, so China is not able to bring more military in the region. Okay, second, China is not able to bring larger arms and ammunitions in the region. Okay, but once if Bhutan cedes to China some of its territory, the valley will widen, China will be able to bring in more arms plus more military in this region. Okay, so this becomes a strategic threat to India, because if the Chinese presence in this region increases, it can totally cut off the Chicken's Neck. And if India loses the Siliguri corridor or the Chicken's Neck, the mainland India totally gets disconnected with northeast. Okay, so this is the importance of this Chicken's Neck or Siliguri corridor to India. Now fortunately, Bhutan being a very friendly state with India, it has not fallen prey to the Chinese persuasion or any of its checkbook diplomacy, and Bhutan has still maintained the friendly relations with India. So we know that the recent standoff was at Doklam. Okay, this Doklam stands at the tri-junction of India, that is the Sikkim state, Bhutan as well as China. The 78-day standoff of Doklam. Okay, again in Chinese attempt to widen the valley. So this is the India-China border problem in the middle sector. Now the third disputed region between India and China, disputed border settlements between India and China, is in the region of northeast, that is the Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, now let's try to understand the history. In 1914, the Shimla Convention was held, and in this Shimla Convention, it was agreed that McMahon Line would be demarcated or would be considered as a border between the then Tibet, which is now a part of China, and British India. Okay, so this line was agreed to be a border between, the McMahon line was agreed to be a border between British India and Tibet. But now, post-independence, China refuses to accept the McMahon line as the border. Okay, so the current regime of China refuses to accept this as the border. What is the Chinese claim? Let us try to understand. China claims that this entire region of Arunachal Pradesh was then a part of Tibet. Okay, now Tibet, if you see the demography of Tibet, it has the highest Buddhist population. So similarly, China claims that there is a large Buddhist population in Arunachal Pradesh. Also, the Tawang district of Arunachal has one of the biggest Buddhist monastery. So China claims that Arunachal Pradesh is nothing but a cultural continuation of Tibet, and hence it becomes a part of China. What is the Indian claim? India says that no, borders cannot be drawn on the basis of culture. Okay, so as per the Shimla Convention, when the boundaries were demarcated between then Tibet and British India, so India considers the McMahon line as the official line between independent India and China. So this is the dispute between India and China in the Arunachal Pradesh sector. So now let us try to understand what is China's Gulf warrior diplomacy. Gulf warrior diplomacy, a common term these days in the Chinese circle. So let us try to understand. We will just start it with a small incident. Now recently the UN Secretary of State made a claim saying that the current Chinese government So Mike Pompeo said that the current Chinese government is a tyrannical regime and purely communist in nature. Okay, so in short, Mike Pompeo calls the current Xi Jinping regime of China a tyrannical communist regime. Now, what was the reply given from the Chinese side? So, Chinese gave a very interesting reply. That is, Yi Pai Huya. Now, what is the meaning of the Chinese phrase? To put it in the most modest way, it means a bunch of nonsense. Okay, so the Chinese side claimed that the US position, the US claims is nothing but a bunch of nonsense. Okay, so in the backdrop of this incident, we will try to understand what is China's new Wolf Warrior diplomacy. Now, to understand this in depth, we need to go into the further depth of the Chinese making. Okay, so we have three prominent personalities and their strategies. First, none other than the founder, that is Mao Zedong. Then comes Deng Xiaoping. And third, the current president of China, that is Xi Jinping. So we will try to understand their policies, their thought process, which marks the Chinese rule. Now let us try to understand that the current Chinese president, that is Xi Jinping, now he is moving. The title of our lecture is China's Warrior Wolf Diplomacy, where Xi is moving away from Deng and embracing Mao back. Now let us try to understand what were the strategies of Mao. Now Mao, that is the founder of modern communist China, so he stayed in power until his death in 1976. Now let us try to understand it. Mao somewhere, now we see that during his tenure in the year 1962, we see the India-China border aggression, commonly called as the India-China war. That is India-China border aggression of 1962. Now see, this was one of the strategy of Mao. Now Mao also believed in the policies of one of the greatest Chinese military strategian, that is Sun Tzu. Okay, so as per Sun Tzu's policy, okay, now how to contain an enemy? So according to the Sun Tzu's policy, it was a two-pronged method. First, attacking the strategy of the enemy, and second, breaking down the or attacking the allies. Okay, now in the year 1959, when we go back in history, in the year 1959, the China and Russia's relation, the Sino-Soviet relations deteriorated. Now India was an ally of USSR, that is then Russia. Okay, India was an ally of it. So in 62, China decided to attack India, that is its allies. Now that was a message to prove or to show the USSR, former Soviet regime, the military power of China. So that is why we see that China attacked unilaterally and also declared a ceasefire unilaterally. So this is in the first phase, that is Mao thought that aggression is a strategy, or aggression will act as a panacea to all the problems. Let it be internal problems or let it be external problems. Now next comes the era of Deng Xiaoping. Now what is Deng Xiaoping known for, or his rule is known for, is the economic opening up of China. Okay, so he led to the liberalization of the Chinese economy, maintaining the communist stand. Okay, so economic opening up of China. Now if we compare the GDP of China then with India, so the figures are very surprising. The Chinese GDP stood at $191 billion. At the same time, the Indian GDP was $182 billion. So very close to the Chinese GDP. But if this is around 4 decades back. If we compare it now, the Chinese GDP is 5 times, or the Chinese economic strength is 5 times to that of India. So we understand that one of the reasons why China is not ready to settle any border issue with India is we do not have any economic matching with China, and China knows that unless we have that economic muscle, we cannot go ahead with the checkbook diplomacy, neither we cannot translate this economic muscle into a military power. Okay, so try to understand this thought of frame also. Second important thing about Deng Xiaoping, let us try to understand. Now, even though Deng was a economic reformer, now see, it is said about China that, okay, whether there can be revolutions in China. Now, we know that China is not a democracy like India, okay, so the thought process is much controlled by the regime. तो क्या यहाँ पे कोई revolution हो सकता है या नहीं? If we talk about revolution, there are two ways. Revolution from the top, that is from the regime itself, and next is revolution from the bottom, that is the people's revolution. Okay, so it is also said about China that China is only one incident away from an accident. So there would be a people's revolution in China. The people will revolt and the entire system will just burst off. But is it a remote possibility? So answer for now comes out to be no. Okay, we know that in China there were revolutions. The old or the historical cultural revolution in China. Okay, now see, this cultural revolution was brought from the top, that is by the Mao. Okay, so till date we have not seen much of people's revolution in China. Now, what is one of the reason why? Why do not the people revolt against the China, even though the regime very totalitarianly or authoritarianly controls the people or the thought process, or there is very less freedom in China? Because the China has kept its, especially its middle class, much satisfied or much happy. This is with the power of its GDP growth. Okay, and whenever there is process, now on an individual level, if we know one thing or another thing about China, that whenever individuals try to protest against the government, so either they are put behind the bars or the person goes missing. Okay, whenever there are mass revolutions, which happens during the time of Deng, okay, that is the Tiananmen Square incident in 1989. So now in this Tiananmen Square incident of 1989, what happened? College protesters. So Deng Xiaoping ruthlessly orders the use of tank to suppress the protest by these college students. Okay, so China knows very well how to deal with any kind of internal revolution. So China deals it with a heavy hand. So the possibility that there can be a revolution in China from below, okay, that is from the bottom or from the people, so answer comes out to be no. Now, if there is any kind of revolution, that will come from the top. Now, when Xi Jinping came to power, okay, like the other two towering leaders, even Xi brought his own charisma into policy making. Now, let us try to understand why Xi is resorting back to the policies of Mao. Okay, this is because of the current problems which are faced by the President Xi Jinping. So let us try to understand this current problems first, and then we will understand why he resorted to the wolf warrior diplomacy. So now let us try to understand two questions. First, what is the wolf warrior diplomacy, and second, why China is pursuing it now. So let us go with the first one. What is this wolf warrior diplomacy? Okay, now let us try to understand. This means that when the Chinese diplomats take a very proactive, aggressive stand to meet the Chinese interest. Okay, so it is not like the olden days where China takes a very conservative stand or China takes a very passive stand. Rather now, the Chinese diplomats will go aggressive, okay, not only on the border issues but also on the diplomatic issues wherever the Chinese interests are to be met. Now, where this term wolf warrior comes from? It comes from the Chinese movie Wolf Warrior 1 and 2, which is stuffed with Chinese nationalism. So this is what is wolf warrior diplomacy, okay? A very proactive and aggressive stand by the Chinese diplomats for serving its foreign interests. Now, what is the need? Why is China pursuing it? Or why is China moving away from the policy of Deng? Now, Deng's policy was to have a very low profile, silent growth. Okay, so this was the policy suggested by Deng Xiaoping. Okay, but there was a rider, this low profile, silent growth was to be followed or was to be pursued unless China becomes economically formidable. Now China has the economic muscle. Okay, so the Chinese GDP is high. Now China wants to translate this economic muscle into a military muscle. So the policy of Xi Jinping or the current regime of China is very clear to make China, or China shall control the global economic order. Next, China shall be a superior military power. So these are the twin ambitions of the current Chinese regime, which are to be pursued or which are to be achieved by using the wolf warrior diplomacy if needed. Okay, so now that we have understood that Xi Jinping is moving away from the policies of Deng Xiaoping, Deng suggested a low-profile, silent growth, or China not to assume any leadership role in the world, and resorting back to the earlier leader, that is Mao, where Mao took an aggressive stand wherever the Chinese interests were to be met. Okay, so we have also seen the twin pillars of the current Chinese policy, that is to dominate the global economic order, and second is a superior military power. Now, why the time has come for the warrior wolf diplomacy? Let's try to understand why China is currently pursuing it. Okay, so let us try to understand. The main reason for this is the pandemic COVID-19. Okay, now it has been released that the beginning of this was from Wuhan. The Americans have already called it as the, instead of calling it the coronavirus, they have called it the Wuhan virus. Okay, clear? So such answers were given. Now, wherever such statements were made against China, the Chinese diplomats replied in a very aggressive stand. They said that this virus was brought to Wuhan by the US military. Okay, we also see that wherever the Chinese were pressurized against this COVID-19 situation, the Chinese foreign diplomats also said that those countries which have a problem should stop wearing the Chinese mask, should stop using the Chinese gowns and the Chinese gloves. Okay, so this is the stand, aggressive stand taken by the Chinese foreign diplomats wherever the Chinese interest came into picture. Second, let us try to understand that China's internal problems. Okay, so at one end we have a very heavy pressure from USA. Second is China's internal problem, may it be Tibet, the protest at Hong Kong and Taiwan. Okay, all hampering China's one China policy. So second is the internal problem. So internally China wants a wave of nationalism once again, okay, which can be brought in by the wolf warrior diplomacy. Third is the US allies, the pressure of US allies. Let us take an example of Australia. Okay, so US plus its allies have taken a stand in United Nations to bring in a very high priority probe, okay, or a high scrutiny in United Nations to find the source of the coronavirus. Now, whether it was manufactured or whether it was a natural, okay, a probe or a scrutiny is informed for the same, where China has highly opposed it. Okay, so we see a very heavy pressure on China from all sides. Okay, next is also the economic slowdown in the past year, but not much of a matter of concern for China, because China will rise again with respect to the economy, but this is also one of the contributing factors to prevent any kind of an internal dissent, where China wants to bask on nationalism once again to keep the internal situations in control. So this is the backdrop because of which the Chinese are not resorting back to the wolf warrior diplomacy. Now coming to the third dimension of our today's lecture series, let us try to understand, is an India-China war likely? Okay, so let us try to understand it. Okay, we will just see a background to it. What are each other's reservation, or how does the Indian and the Chinese mind work? Let us try to understand first with the Doklam standoff, which happened at the trijunction of Sikkim, Bhutan and China. Now, India had apprehensions about it that China is constructing a road in the Doklam region, okay, which would build up the strategic capabilities of Chinese operations in the region. Now the current crisis in 2020 near the Pangong Tso Lake, okay, in the Ladakh region. Now why the Chinese are very apprehensive about it, or why they walked inside in this region as per the Indian claims? Let us try to understand that the BRO, Border Road Organization, is constructing a road connecting the Pangong Tso. Okay, so this finger regions in the Pangong Tso to the Old Daulat Begi sector, that is in the Galwan Valley. Okay, so this construction of road is acting as a deterrence for the China. So the current Chinese aggression in the region is because of this construction of the road connecting the Pangong region to the Galwan Valley. Okay, clear. So more of the current conflicts are because of some of the tactical maneuvering on both the sides, rather than having a huge border issue at the entire length of the border. Now let's try to understand, is an India-China war likely? So answer comes out to be no. Both the countries are mature countries and both of them won't like to go for a war in the current position. So now let us try to understand why we are saying a no, why an India-China war is unlikely to get escalated by a design or an accident. Let us try to understand it. Now first, both the countries, that is India and China, how do they look at each other? Okay, so both the countries do not look at each other ideologically. Unlike the US, which looks at China as a communist regime, India has never commented on the type of government in India. Neither China has been very apprehensive about the democratic character of the Indian politics. So basically, how does India and China resolve the issue, if there is any issue? So basically, the resolution or the discussion is on the basis of issues and not on the basis of ideology. Okay, so there are no ideological disputes between India and China which can get further escalated to a war. Second is, both the countries are sensitive about each other's externalities. Okay, as well as both the countries are sensitive about each other's domestic problems. Okay, now let's try to see when was the last time China has made a statement on Kashmir in these many years. So answer comes out to be it is very seldom, once or twice, not more than that. Okay, when was the last time India has made any statement on Tibet or on Taiwan or on Hong Kong? Okay, so we see very less references to it. The point is, both the countries have maintained it that they do not interfere in each other's domestic or internal matters. Next is about the handling of these issues or handling of the crisis domestically. Okay, so how the current governments in both the countries are handling the crisis. So if we see about the Doklam issue, so we see that the Chinese government, okay, managed the perception of the people in China. Similarly, the Indian government claimed victory in the Doklam issue. So both the countries are simultaneously claiming victory on the same issue. Okay, so the domestic population of the country is much satisfied, or we can say that there is a perception management of the people on both the sides. And the last is about the pressure on China. Okay, will China go for a two-front war? Okay, will it likely go for a two-front war? Answer comes out to be no. Now, which are the two fronts? At one end there is India, and at other end there is a Chinese problem in the South China Sea region. Okay, so we know that in the South China Sea region, China has a host of differences or problems with the Southeast Asian countries, and at the other end, problems with or war with India. It would be unaffordable for China. Similarly, looking at the economic scenario, currently a war with China would be unaffordable to India. Okay, as we know the quotation, nobody is victorious in war. There is an economic damage on both the sides. Next is, China also fears the damage of reputation. Already its reputation has been damaged because of the COVID-19 pandemic spread. So at this point of time, China would not take the risk to be branded as an aggressor worldwide by initiating a war. So all in all, we see that looking at the maturity of both the countries, India and China currently would not like to go for a war. So now let us try to understand India's response to China. Okay, so unlike China, India decided not to use any, so no use of harsh words. Okay, so we took care about the sensitivity of China. Now see, in the recent skirmishes near the Pangong Lake, Okay, where China claims that the Indian soldiers entered the LAC region into the territory of China. There is a counter claim by India that the Chinese soldiers entered the territory, they crossed the LAC. Okay, so as a statement given by our current army chief, the statement says that it is because of the perceptual differences between the two. Okay, so both of them have suffered because of the perceptual differences. Okay, so nobody is blamed in this case. Okay, second, nobody plays a victim. Okay, so the careful selection of words by the army chief, okay, has maintained, or we can say had rather smothered the situation from escalating any further. Next comes the India stand of proactive diplomacy with firm ground posturing. Okay, so remember this very well, and India has been very consistent with respect to it. Let it be the Doklam standoff of 2017, or let it be the Pangong Tso standoff of 2020. So India held the ground very firmly. So an affirmative military stand on the ground, but at the other level the talks did not stop. That is a proactive diplomacy. So India has quite strongly proved its military deterrence in the region. Second is this construction of the road is also a concern to China. The road connecting the Pangong Tso to the old Daulat Begi sector. Okay, why this road is important? Because with coming up of this road, India would have a larger control on the Aksai Chin region. Okay, what is the fear of the China, or what acts as a deterrence for the China? That by using this road strategically in the near future, India might try to claim its lost territory of the Aksai Chin region. So currently it has been acting as a credible deterrence on China. The third and the most important point is the modern day China understands the ground realities of the day very carefully. Okay, so it won't go back the way Mao did in 1962. It won't go back or resort to the strategies of Sun Tzu, that is attacking the strategy of enemy. Okay, because this time the enemy is not USSR or Soviet Union, but USA. And next is attacking the allies. Okay, because this time the allies, that is India, is also not of 1962, but it is a new India of 2020. Okay, so this was, I hope this presentation was helpful to you. So we have broadly discussed the China's warrior wolf diplomacy, as well as the possibility of war between India and China, the India-China border disputes and the settlement actions, and lastly, what is India's response to China. So thank you very much for being a part of this. I hope the presentation was helpful to you.
We have sent you the app download link. Also, it is mentioned in the description section given below. So stay connected with us. Never miss an important lecture. You might never know which examination you clear, and that might be a life-changing event for you. So kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel. Press on the bell icon so that whenever we update or upload any important lecture, so you might get a notification for it. If you have appreciated our quality of coaching and efforts, do like our lectures. Share this video with your friends so that even they get benefited from it.